Welcome to the Sidney Yates Auditorium. Prior to the start of this event, please silence your mobile device. In the event of an emergency, please listen for instruction and proceed to the nearest exit. The primary exit is through the rear of the auditorium and out the C Street entrance. An alternate route is through the exit doors to the right and left of the stage. Staff will be observing to offer assistance to persons with special needs. Thank you. Welcome to the Sidney Yates Auditorium. Prior to the start of this event, please silence your mobile device. In the event of an emergency, please listen for instruction and proceed to the nearest exit. The primary exit is through the rear of the auditorium and out the C Street entrance. An alternate route is through the exit doors to the right and left of the stage. Staff will be observing to offer assistance to persons with special needs. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Wow, that was quick. If everyone could just take a minute to silence your phones and turn off your flashes, I would appreciate it. Thank you. You know what, I'm going to put this down a little bit lower. So I am thrilled to welcome you all to the official launch of OPM's Intern Experience Program. And special thanks to the Department of the Interior and NASA for being partners with us on this event. I'm Ellen Heyer. I am in the Office of the Deputy Director at OPM. I'm a senior advisor there, and I am honored to moderate today's program. So just a very quick fun fact before we start the program. I have actually worked at Department of the Interior for the National Park Service in this building. I worked at NASA headquarters, and I'm currently at OPM. So that gives you a sense of the diversity of federal career could have. So I'm so excited for all of you to be here. Those of you who are early on in your federal journeys, the world, or I should say the universe, in keeping in line with today's theme, is your oyster. So we'll start off with some brief intro remarks before we jump in to the main event and meet the crew. So please join me in welcoming OPM's Deputy Director, Rob Shriver.
Thanks, Ellen. Good morning, everyone. Wow, this is just amazing. It's so great to see you all here in the room. I know we have, I think, several hundred more interns online. Thanks so much for joining us here today. And on behalf of OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, I'd like to welcome you not only to this great event, but to the federal family. I know that some of you have already been working with us for a little bit, a few weeks, maybe some a few months. Maybe some you've been here before and are coming back this summer. But others of you are really just getting started. And I'm so excited for the diverse talent, the unique lens, and the energy that I know you're bringing to your jobs. Let me start by telling you just a little bit about OPM and why this guy's up here talking to you today. So OPM is an agency in the federal government, just like the Environmental Protection Agency or the Social Security Administration. The difference is that we focus exclusively on the federal workforce. And we literally, through our policies, through our benefits programs, through everything that we do, we touch every federal employee from the time they're recruited and hired all the way through their careers until they retire and beyond, including astronauts. We work every day to help make the federal government the model employer in the country. Now, how cool is that? There is actually an entire federal agency whose job it is to make the federal government a better employer. And in doing this, we are guided by our own North Star, which is the phrase, people first. Of course, interns are people too, right? And honestly, like, you would not believe how much we talk about you. Like, at all levels of government, the senior-most levels that I'm involved in, we talk about interns all the time. So how is it that we're putting you first? Well, first, we at OPM, we are your champions with agencies all across the government, and we're advocating every day about why they should hire more interns. Because, just because we think that agencies should hire interns, that doesn't mean that it automatically happens. So we try to help them understand why it's really important to have that pipeline of talent that starts with interns. Second, we really want your experience to be fantastic. We have a new intern experience effort that we're leading from OPM, and today's event is part of that, but there's more to come, so be on the lookout throughout the summer. And then third, we want you to come back, whether it's for another summer or a job right after you finish your education, or after you've spent a few years working in another sector, or even once you're an expert in your field. There's lots of opportunities. We want you to have a good experience, and we want you to want to come back. And so we are working to streamline those different pathways to make it easier to pursue a federal job no matter the stage of your career. There are so many diverse job opportunities in the federal government, like literally just about every kind of job you can imagine. And today, you're going to be meeting some of the coolest public servants ever. So I look forward to hearing from them as they share their reflections, experience, and advice to you. And with that, I'll turn it back to Ellen. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. And now I'm going to bring to the stage and welcome DOI Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary Joan Mooney. And I just have to say, Joan, you have the most appropriate last name for this event, so welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ellen. It's such a great privilege to welcome you all to the Stuart Lee Udall Interior Building today. You're in a very special place that's witnessed some of the most important decisions regarding our country's natural and cultural resources over the past 80 years. Since Ellen started with a fun fact, I will too. Reach just under your seat chair, and you'll feel a little wire there. Where that comes from is that's for ranchers and farmers who came to meet in this great building to store their hats upside down, the brims. So there's a lot of interesting detail. Perhaps none more interesting than in this very room in 1939, then Interior Secretary Harold Ickes meeting with great civil rights leaders like Mary McLeod Bethune, like the head of the NAACP, Walter White, and so many others. Secretary Ickes made the decision to open the grounds of the Lincoln Memorial for Marian Anderson to have a large venue to accommodate the opera star's performance in the nation's capital. You see, she was a Black woman. Anderson, one of the greatest opera singers, had just been rejected by the Daughters of the American Revolution to perform across the street in Constitution Hall due to a white-only artist clause in all of its contracts. This prompted Secretary Ickes to make the decision to give Anderson a venue at a landmark managed by the National Park Service, a place for all people to gather, regardless of the color of their skin. We still have a long way to go, whether it's in racial equity, climate change, or treatment of our indigenous peoples. But while achieving real change can take time, it does eventually have a lasting impact. The aspiration of centuries of American presidents about conserving our public lands and resources for the common good are being fulfilled today by the first Native American Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland. This summer, you're going to see changes in yourself personally as a result of your experience. You'll also learn and grow professionally in this internship. And I also hope, like Rob hopes and like we all hope, that you'll come to see the value of public servants and the many different paths ahead for you in it, both inside and outside of government. It's certainly been the honor of a lifetime for me. And I'll close with some wisdom from my former colleague and friend and mentor, the late Congressman John Lewis, who was just about your age when he began a lifetime of civil rights leadership and public service, and incidentally, some good trouble. Take a long, hard look down the road you'll have to travel once you've made a commitment to work for change, he said. Know that this transformation will not happen right away. Change often takes time, and it rarely happens all at once. Lewis knew that his work might not be finished in his lifetime, but he believed that somehow, some way, we'll create a national community, a world community that is at peace. And he believed that we all have roles to play in it. I look forward to seeing the role that you play in the future in creating a more just and peaceful nation and a better world. Thank you. And by the way, the Steinway piano that accompanied Marian Anderson's historic performance at the Lincoln Memorial is to my left and your right. And it's been used to celebrate our great and diverse nation ever since. So before you leave, go over and see it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joan. And this building just has so much beautiful history, so definitely check out the Steinway piano and the murals. Okay, next I would like to bring up from NASA the Associate Administrator for the Office of STEM Engagement, Mike Kincaid.
Thanks, Ellen and Rob. And before I get into this, let me just ask questions for those of you in the room. Show of hands, how many are on your first federal internship? Wow, so those of you who are watching online, I would say 2/3, maybe 3/4 of the room are raised their hand, which is awesome. Both Rob and Joan talked about kind of the context and the history. And I want to go back with you for a moment. It's the summer of 1987. It's Houston, Texas. And I'm driving my Honda on the site, the Johnson Space Center, for the first time as an intern, 36 years ago. And I was reflecting on it. I couldn't help but reflect on that experience today as I come and I see you folks, many of you who are here for the first time. You may not be working from NASA, although we're thrilled you're here to hear today from our crew members, but you're part of the federal service and you're part of making a difference. Now I have a confession to make. I thought I was just gonna go to NASA for 3 semesters and then I was gonna get a real job, because who wants to work for the government their whole life, right? 36 years ago, here I still am. And what I found when I started at Johnson Space Center all those years ago is that there were so many things I could do, so many different ways to get plugged in. And that's still true today. Whether you're at the agency you are now, whether you're at one of our other sister agencies, what I think is so cool is when OPM and Department of Interior and all the other agencies can come together to make a difference. So now, if you will, think about 36 years from now, right? 36 years ago, I was in my early 20s driving across that through the security gate. Now imagine 36 years from now, it's 2059 if I did my public math correctly, right? And what are you doing? Where are you? I'm having a chance to be part of an astronaut debrief to interns across the country with colleagues from other agencies. I happen to be doing it from the United States of America in Washington, D.C. Where will you be doing it from? Maybe you're doing it from a national park. Maybe you're doing it from the moon. Maybe you're doing it from a space station. You know, that's clearly what the kinds of things NASA. But just think about what you could be doing. And I'm just so curious to find out where your time this summer leads. The people you meet. There's people that I met 36 years ago that I'm still friends with, that I'm still colleagues with, that have made a difference in my career. And I know that will be true for each one of you as well. So thank you for being part of this journey. Thank you for being part of this federal service, and thank you for making a difference to so many students in so many different ways all across the country. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Mike. And now I'm going to bring to the stage Tika Carlson, who is my OPM colleague, and she's going to talk about why we're here and what we're launching.
Thanks, Ellen, and thanks everyone for being here today. I'm Tika Carlson, and I'm a special assistant to the director at OPM, and I do a lot of work on internships. So there are two reasons we're here. We're going to hear from SpaceX Crew-5 astronauts, which will be humbling and inspiring, and we're launching the new federal internship program, which I would encourage you all to take full advantage of. So it's a free program that we designed in partnership with your host agencies. And our goal is really to help you make the most of your internship experience this summer and to sort of gain enriching professional development opportunities. We're going to have cool events like this one. We're going to offer training. Next week, we're having a session on problem definition and then other topics like memo writing. We're going to have mentoring, workshops, great events. So after this, if you haven't signed up, see one of the QR codes in the lobby, sign up, and then also you can go to opm.gov/intern and sign up for all of the events there. Thank you so much for joining us, and I will pass it back to Ellen.
Okay, now is the big event. Are you all ready to meet the NASA SpaceX Crew-5 astronauts? All right, I'm going to go ahead and call them up one by one. First up, the NASA astronaut who's also a colonel in the U.S. Marine Corps, the first Indigenous woman in space, and overall badass, Mission Commander Nicole Mann. Next, we have the Crew-5 pilot, the NASA astronaut who's also a Navy captain and test pilot, and also has a PhD in physics, Josh Cassada. And finally, from JAXA, the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency, the veteran astronaut who is an engineer, has been to space 5 times, has been the first for numerous accomplishments, and by many accounts is the kindest man in the universe, Koichi Wakata. So now we're going to go ahead and see a video of their experience, but I'll hand it to the crew to introduce and then cue the video.
Thanks so much for having us here today. We launched in October and spent 5.5 months aboard the International Space Station. And so we just returned a few months ago, and we're getting used to gravity again. But I think we'd like to just jump right into the video, share our experience with you, and then we'll be happy to answer some of your questions at the end.
Uh-oh. Is that going to stop?
Can we cue the video?
And there they are. The astronauts of Crew-5 taking their first steps outside as they head to the pad. There they go. The rocket recline. There it is.
I like the way they did it kind of in coordination.
And here we go, the first 2 astronauts to board Crew Dragon. On the left, Josh Cassada, and on the right, Commander Nicole Mann. And here come our second 2 astronauts, mission specialists, Koichi Wakata and Anna Kikinen.
Special thanks on behalf of all the crew to our family and friends. It is your love and support that help make dreams come true. Now let's do this. Crew-5 displays are configured for launch. Stage 2 Alpha.
Stage separation confirmed. Copy 2 Alpha.
And there is separation.
Dragon separation confirmed.
On Crew-5, call this little guy our free fall indicator. We're here to tell you there's plenty of gravity up here. In fact, that's what's keeping us in orbit right now.
The moon in the farthest portion of your screen there, the furthest back circle, Dragon in the middle, and the International Space Station in the closest field of view, of course, with our pale blue dot underneath.
Q6 on the big loop, contact and soft capture complete. Attenuation in progress.
Here we come through. First one through the hatch is going to be Nicole Mann, commander of Dragon. Next one through the hatch is Josh Cassada, the pilot of Dragon. Koichi Wakata of JAXA coming through the hatch. And last but not least, Anna Kikina of Roscosmos just entered the International Space Station, and Crew-5 is officially ingressed from Dragon Endurance into their home for the next 6 months, the International Space Station.
Well, launch, we were finally in space and it was time to get to work. We conducted over 250 science experiments on board, some experiments on our body, some technology development. This is Astro-B, which are autonomous flying robots, and in the future will be exploration of space with humans and robots together. We grew yeast and yogurt on board, as well as tomatoes. This development is for deep space travel or when we're on the lunar surface so that we can develop a nutritional food for those long duration missions. Because we're in microgravity, it's a unique laboratory. There's no gravity gradients, no heat gradients. There's a lot of science we can do on different types of materials. And we also deployed over 15 CubeSats while we were on board, and some of the first CubeSats from Zimbabwe and Uganda. And so it was great. Some of these countries that have developing space programs are on board the space station.
Exposed to the stress of human spaceflight undergoes epigenetic changes, which is the addition of information to the DNA. This plant habitat experiment is to investigate if this additional information to the DNA is transmitted to the next generation through seeds. And this is a different experiment. The Veggie-5 experiment is to address the need for continuous fresh food production in zero gravity, and checking the impacts of fertilizer as well as the light condition for the plant growth. We also tested a new technology for the water recycle system that will recycle urine and sweat into the water for potable water that is needed for future human space exploration that requires a smaller volume and also less power, electrical power.
This experiment here is the biofabrication facility. Super cool technology in that we're doing 3D printing of tissues in space. And so we got to get this experiment set up. My kids and I had just built a 3D printer a couple months before launch. And so it was really neat to share this with them because we're in a spot now where we don't have to build support structures. In microgravity, we can just build the tissues. These are two of my favorite experiments, the alpha magnetic spectrometer and the cold atom lab. They both live on the space station. We didn't have a chance to interact with them too much because they didn't break while we were there, even though I was kind of hoping that they would. What we did primarily in our spacewalks was augment the solar power that we've got on the space station. So we did a series of 5 spacewalks. Our crewmate Frank and I, we went out the door 3 times between November and the end of December. And so here we are heading out to build the Tinker Toys that this giant solar array will plug into. Just amazing technology. And Keisha, if you want, you can bring up the audio a little bit. You can hear some of the comms here.
You are clear there, Rosa, but I don't think you realize how close we are. We're only 3 feet away from each other when you strike. Oh, really? Yeah. Thank you for letting me know. Oh, no problem. Not an issue.
The top left, you can see some of the bolts sticking out. Those are going to be the hard capture. Those 2 handles you see are going to be our soft capture mechanism.
And you'll see these new ones roll out. And we installed a handful of these, and we've got one going out on Friday. The solar array is really massive. So Koichi and Nicole flew me around on the end of the robotic arm to get it where it needed to be, but it took a lot to pitch that thing around because the center of gravity of the solar array is so far away that you've got thousands of foot-pounds you need to put into it to get it into spot. So there it is rolling out. That is not real time. That probably took 8 to 10 minutes or so for it to completely roll out. And that is just a great example of this amazing achievement is only done with the efforts of thousands and thousands of people on board, people down in mission control, and then Frank and I out there doing what we're told to do.
So Nicole and I supported the EVA spacewalk of Josh and Frank as a robotic arm operator and also suit donning and doffing inside of the space station. And this time we went out to install the new components for the upcoming IROSA, the solar array installation, which is happening this week, actually on Friday. And we had some structural interference issue of installing this modification kit for the solar arrays. And the tools broke, and the method that we came up with did not work. But with the real-time support from the ground, we were able to physically install the modification kit for the upcoming spacewalks. And then when our cosmonauts colleagues were preparing for their spacewalk using this European robotic arm, we had an issue with the thermal control system, a coolant leak on the Soyuz spacecraft. And the ground team came up with the methodology to make a safe return in case we have an emergency on board the space station using this Soyuz spacecraft as well as our Crew-5 SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft. This was also a demonstration of how great that the teamwork is on the ground in order to come up with the new ideas, creative ideas to overcome the difficulties we encounter in space.
So on top of all the science that we execute and the spacewalks, there's a lot of maintenance to be done on board the space station. Some of that maintenance is because something's broken, we need to fix it, but also a lot of upgrades are ongoing. There's new technologies, and so it's important that we continue to upgrade the space station. Some of that technology is development for these future deep space missions. This is a 4-bed CO2 scrubber in which we replaced and upgraded a lot of components. That's going to help with the atmosphere on board stations so that we aren't exposed to CO2 levels that are too high. Also the spacesuits, we do all the maintenance on the spacesuits, and we had a pump, a little fan separator pump that broke, and Josh and I had an opportunity to repair it.
Yeah, in fact, this was the spacesuit that I was initially going to go out in on our first spacewalk, but the fan wouldn't come on. So we put that one to bed, and I used a different one for our 3 spacewalks. But after that, Nicole and I did what we call open shoulder surgery. This is not maintenance that anyone planned on us doing, and really the system wasn't designed to be worked on in space, but we have to get it done, and boy, the team put together an incredible plan for us. They trained us, gave us the skills we needed on the ground, and then worked with us on board to get it done. We weren't sure if it worked, but Koichi took it out in a month or 2, and it worked great. So it was an amazing, amazing accomplishment, and we're trying really hard to not lose any tiny little pieces there. As you can imagine, in space, things start floating away, and it's tough to track them down.
There are new modules on the space station, and we enjoyed ingressing those components of the space station, which I've never seen before. Frank is now doing a maintenance work of a microgravity science glove box in the US laboratory module. And we have conducted a variety of experiments, especially the material science type experiments using this microgravity science glove box.
So during time on space station, we also get to just experience microgravity. Koichi here is working out. It's important that we work out 2 hours while we're on board the space station so you don't lose bone density and muscle loss as well. So we have a treadmill on board, a resistive exercise device, as well as a bicycle on board, which is really just a box with pedals in it, no seat or handles required because there's no gravity. And in the Russian segment, there's also a treadmill. This is Anya running on the treadmill.
So because I come from physics, I was really excited to find this drill that had just been recently flown up. So we did a little conservation of angular momentum and then a little linear momentum there. I wasn't expecting that from Frank.
I'm a big fan of baseball. It's just impossible to do this on the ground, but in space, you can throw a pitch and fly like the wind, faster than the ball. And you can hit the ball. And not only that, after you hit the ball, you fly faster than the ball, and then you can even catch it. So this is possible in space, in zero gravity.
We spent a lot of time just enjoying microgravity and playing Superman and Superwoman while we're on board. You can see Josh flying by here, and he's got his little Superman capes on his socks. And then, you know, the properties of everything is so different in microgravity. This is simply water. So we squirt water out of a bag, and because of the surface tension, it forms this sphere. And then, of course, we put some food coloring in that and an Alka-Seltzer because we wanted to see what would happen with the bubbles, how it would behave. And then naturally smash your face into the ball of water to see how that water then sticks to your face. I forgot that we had put Alka-Seltzer in, though, so then that Alka-Seltzer went right up my nose, which didn't feel great.
Taking care of yourself on board is a little bit more complicated, but the nice thing, like Nicole says, is water just tends to maintain its position there due to surface tension because gravity's not pulling it off. And here we got to go trick-or-treating in October, and then also here's the cupola on Christmas Eve. And here's Nicole trying out the coffee cup.
This is a coffee cup for space, and as we talked about that water, the surface tension will just stick to everything. So I just sprayed or put some coffee in here. It's sticking to the edges of the cup, and due to the capillary effect and a little bit of suction, you can take a sip of coffee in space, which, believe me, is a luxury when you've just been drinking out of a bag for 5 months.
This is a cool view that you can get from the aft end of the space station. And then here's Nicole going into her crew quarters, which is really nothing more than a closet, but everyone has one. We've got a sleeping bag there on the wall, and you just strap yourself in. It's incredibly comfortable. I was a little concerned that I wouldn't be sleeping well up there, but there are no pressure points on you whatsoever, and I slept like a rock.
This is probably the most favorite place on board the space station for astronauts to be able to see the beautiful home planet. This is a cupola module, which has 7 large windows. And one night, I believe in February, Nicole and Josh found a fantastic view of the aurora borealis over North Pacific and then North America. The combination, the contrast of the the moon, aurora, and the view of the city lights were magnificent. This is flying over Japan, Kyushu Islands. And when you look at the daytime of the Earth, you can see the power of nature, the clouds, hurricane, volcano eruption. I really can feel the power of the nature. On the contrary, on the nighttime, what you see is this magnificent view of the city lights, and I really felt that we have a huge consumption of energy by the human society if you look at the nighttime of the beautiful home planet. Again, this is aurora borealis over North America. The combination of this aurora and then also the Earth atmosphere and then the city lights, as well as you can see the blue lights just before sunrise. It's an amazing view.
So while on board, we also had 2 visiting cargo vehicles. We had a SpaceX 26 cargo and also a Cygnus NG-18, which was the SS Sally Ride. These cargo vehicles are filled with food, science, clothes, everything that you need to support life and your work on board the space station. So Josh and I trained to fly the robotic arm, and for the Cygnus, you actually fly that robotic arm here, you come out and you capture the spacecraft, as you're seeing in this video, and then that spacecraft is berthed to the International Space Station. We open the hatch, and then cargo ops begin, which are, no joke, hundreds and hundreds of bags and equipment on board. Now, because we can use all 3D surfaces on board the space station, you can stow things on the floor and in the ceiling and in all the walls. But it's an incredible group of folks on the ground and in space that make these resupply missions happen. Not only is it really complicated from a logistics perspective, but sometimes there's time-critical science on board that we are trying to execute. And so it needs to have maybe proper cooling before it comes up to the space station.
So after 5.5 months, the next crew, Crew-6, came on board, and we overlapped for about a week. Everyone quickly learned that 11 is way too many people to have on a space station, so it was time for us to head home. So we undocked. We were in the Crew Dragon again for about 19 hours, and then we returned back to Florida, just off the coast of Tampa. You're going to see that's our last shot of the space station. I'll tell you what, we got an incredible view as we left, went over top, and then started our deorbit sequence to come home. And so you can see us entering the atmosphere here, and this is some IR footage. We splashed down maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. Those chutes coming out is a really, really great feeling, as is the knock on the door here. You'll see that SpaceX uses Air Force Special Forces. That's their background, and now they work for SpaceX. And when you hear that knock on the door, you know you're safe and you're in good hands. And so here they are, after pulling us onto the boat, they take us out one at a time. All of us feeling pretty good, although your inner ear has got a mind of its own for a little while. And then they make sure we're in good shape in a medical tent, and then we get on a helicopter and go back to the Kennedy Space Center, and then back home to Houston, and in this case, in time for breakfast. It was a long night.
So that was our incredible mission, and I think hopefully we have some time to take some of your questions.
I'm going to join you all on stage.
Thank you. Yes.
So at OPM, we collected some questions from the early career talent staff. And they run the gamut from mission-specific questions to career advice. Obviously, we have a lot of folks who are early in their federal journeys, and then we have a few fun questions interspersed within. We also have microphones in the audience. If you have a burning question that you would like to ask the crew, feel free to come up to one of the microphones, and then we'll make sure your question gets answered. So today's program is all about the launch of our intern experience program. So want to talk to you about your experience on station, and maybe just in 10 words or less, describe how you felt about your experience and what it meant to you. And we'll start with Koichi.
Well, 10 words or less, that's tough. But what we do is explore to gain new knowledge that benefit our life on Earth, and explore beyond low Earth orbit to the Moon and Mars. That's what we did.
Awesome.
I would say incredibly busy, and at the same time incredibly exciting. The universe threw a handful of curveballs at us while we were up there. I know I've gone over my 10 now, so this doesn't count. Right? We had that leak of the Soyuz that Koichi had mentioned, and that meant that we all had to come together to find a solution on how to have a safe configuration there on the spacecraft, or on the space station. And that meant that we modified our own spacecraft. All kinds of issues with the space station itself. We've been flying that space station for over 20 years, so it is a complicated vehicle, and so it definitely kept us busy. It was exciting.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Nicole?
For me, definitely the most rewarding experience of my life, and mostly thanks to the huge NASA team on Earth that supported and made that mission happen.
Awesome.
He was closer to 10.
Yeah. So one of the very first visuals in the video and then on your flight suits is your mission patch. Can you describe the significance of the patch and then also kind of describe your specific cruise patch?
Sure. So we have two boys. They're now 14 and 12. And during our time in Houston, they seem to have always been designing a patch. They were just very excited to do this. So our oldest boy is he's a student of SpaceX patches in particular, and so he knew what has historically happened. And so he came up with the Dragon 5, and then his little brother had this really cool idea of bringing the commercial crew symbol back behind the Dragon, and then you could see the Crew Dragon on here. So with some trepidation, I reached out to these two and said, I know I'm biased. I think it's awesome, but I'm biased. You guys, what do you think? You think this is something we can work with? And we refined it a bit with a professional, but it turned out really, really great. And then Nicole's son, Jack, realized that from time to time we listen to kids, and so he designed the 68 patch. So it was a really neat experience, I think, for everybody.
Very cool. And love that it was an inclusive effort. So one of the questions that came in, so there's the hashtag GRWM, get ready with me. So can you describe your get ready with me day of launch routine? I'll start with Koichi, since I'm looking right at you.
Okay, so on launch day, I think it's my standard thing to eat. It's an egg and steak for launch. And then about 3.5 hours before launch, we wear the suit and then get on the vehicle to go to the launch pad. But this time, the weather worked out great. And sometimes we are always told that until the rocket is lit, don't think that you're going to space. But thanks to the great weather, we were able to go on October the 5th at noon. So.
That's great.
You have to fly in space 5 times in order to be able to say you have a standard routine. So for me and Nicole, it was our first time. And for me, launch day started the night before. That was because we were going to launch during the middle of the day, I was able to say, see you later to my family. We then, as a crew, got together and had dinner. And they still make fun of me for making a bad choice. We don't call it our last meal. We just call it our last meal before splashdown. It was really a special night to be able to spend as a crew, go get a good night's sleep, and then get to work.
That's great.
For me, it was also nice to say goodnight to our families and see you in 6 months the night before, because I think it's so important to be focused on that day of launch. Of course, you want to make sure you have everything that you need for launch, and you ride out to the rocket. It feels just like all the other times you've ridden out to the rocket in a training environment, though. And because of that, I didn't feel nervous. I thought maybe I was going to be nervous, like you get strapped into a roller coaster and you don't know what's going to happen and your heart is pounding. But I didn't feel that way laying on top of the rocket. Of course, I'm excited. Yes, my heart's pounding, but I'm not nervous, and it's because I'm prepared and we're ready to go. We joked, it felt so much like the simulator that we thought our SpaceX trainer was going to open the hatch and say, just kidding, this is just another training event. But as a countdown from 10 to 1, and you feel that rocket come alive, and the G-forces start to come through your chest, you're actually finally made it, and we're going to space.
It's probably not surprising that SpaceX let us put together a playlist. So in our car, we went back and forth between songs that we had on our playlist, and then Koichi and Anya did the same thing in their vehicle.
Okay, so I have to ask, what were the songs that were most played, or the favorite songs played on station?
Oh, on station?
On station?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Frank Rubio, he flew on Soyuz, and so Frank is still on station because he got stuck up there when that Soyuz leak happened. So he'll be on board station for over a year. He listens to like 90s rap, like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air type stuff. And then he had some Katy Perry songs, and it was like this TGIF, until Frank would be dancing around, which is not very Frank-like at all. It was hilarious.
That was a good one.
Well, it sounds like and looked like from the video that there are opportunities to have fun. So can you tell us a little bit more about what were your most fun things to do when you had a little bit of spare time?
For me, it was the meal time together. We have a variety of foods from different countries. And then, of course, I'm Japanese. I really like the Japanese food. But everybody, put together a different kind of meals. Sometimes, on weekends, Saturday or Friday, we get together to have dinner together. And quite often some of us are really good at making cake for birthdays and stuff like that. So using honey and then cheese, and very creative. So the meal time was the most fun time for me.
Oh, that's great.
I think I heard you describe Nicole as badass. Did I hear that right?
Yes.
I think that's fairly accurate, right, as a Marine fighter pilot. But I will tell you, I had a few advantages in space. One is that she doesn't have very long arms. So you could actually just position her in the middle of a module and just leave her there, and she can't get anywhere, which makes her seem a little less tough. And there was one day that we were getting ready for a public affairs event, and it's in the Japanese module. We typically do that. It's a great spot to do it. But up above is like an attic where we can store stuff. And she started messing with me. We tend to keep our water bags or whatever we're drinking with their Velcro to our legs. And she grabbed my water bag and she chucked it up into the attic. And I just turned, looked at her, braced my feet, and just grabbed her and chucked her into the attic. And we were pretty sure there was nothing hard up there, but we eventually found her and got her back.
I think in this common theme of picking on me, Josh is a physicist, right? So he always comes up with these harebrained ideas on the weekend of something cool that we can do. And so you saw a little bit example of the drill that we had on board. So the conservation of angular momentum, obviously his mass is more than mine, and so we get spinning on this drill, and he's got the trigger of the drill. And I don't realize until we watch the video later, he's barely moving, but I am. And even though there's no gravity, when you let go, whoa, I mean, you're all over the place. So it was pretty fun, just exploring what it's like to live in microgravity.
And it seems like you all have such a good camaraderie and just community, so that's great to see. I do want to follow up on something Koichi said, talking about meals and meal prep. So can we squash the rumor that astronaut ice cream that's sold in the Smithsonian is not actually what you eat? Or can you expand on that and tell us a little bit more about how you prepare meals and what you bring?
Well, most of the meals are like freeze-dried items or like thermally stabilized meals like meat and fish and vegetables that you warm up and eat. Actually, that the Smithsonian ice cream, I'd always thought, oh, maybe I can eat something like that, ice cream like that in space, but we don't have that kind of thing. But sometimes we have a real ice cream. When we had the Cygnus spacecraft, the Dragon spacecraft, the cargo spacecraft, they launched some fresh food items, including ice cream and cheese. So we have to finish really quickly, but we can enjoy the real ice creams only sometimes.
Yeah, twist our arm. We have to eat all that ice cream right away.
Well, and it sounds like you work out 2 hours a day too, so that helps stave off the extra calories from the ice cream.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was on a 3,000 calorie a day diet, and it was really difficult late at night where I, still 500 calories short, and I'm trying to shove food down my mouth. And I still lost 10 pounds while we were on board.
Wow.
You'll be happy to know I found all of it and then some. Yeah, it's, the body reacts differently. We tend to lose a lot of water mass because your body doesn't need all that down in its lower extremities. And we are working out 2.5 hours a day, so we're burning calories that way too.
So we've mentioned family a couple times. So how do you communicate with your family and how often? Is it WhatsApp? Is it text? Is it FaceTime? So can you describe that?
The communication is actually pretty great. As long as you have TDRS satellite coverage, you can, on your laptop, call down on a regular landline that gets routed via NASA. And so you have an opportunity to talk to your family or really anybody on Earth. One of my favorites in the evening was to call people down when it was their birthday to wish them a happy birthday, and it was pretty cool. You got a lot of, disbelief and then excitement as you were saying that you were calling from space to wish a happy birthday. But we also have video conference, so once a week we can video conference with our family. But now, with the changes in technology, they're improving that onboard station. So there's a new app on an iPad where you're able to initiate via a website on the ground a video conference, which is becoming more readily available. And just a couple weeks ago, we heard that they're going to have on the iPads different types of social media, so like Facebook and Twitter or Insta, so that you can communicate with folks on Earth. So that will be new in the upcoming years.
That's
Not necessarily always good news, though. I'll tell you my family, because the time change typically is 5 or 6 hours, and so it'll be 10 or 11 o'clock at night our time, so we think that's a great time to call. Turns out 5 o'clock is not a great time to call every day when family is trying to have dinner and do homework and all these kind of things. So to answer your question of how often, I would say my family eventually got to the point of saying too often.
That's right. Well, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about kind of career path and some advice that you have to those in the audience and also online. One question, though, at OPM we talk a lot about the importance of mentors. So if each of you could talk about someone in your life who has helped you get to where you are today or who has made a deep impact, that would be great. I'll start with Nicole this time.
Okay, great. So there were really a ton of people, I think, throughout my life that have been great mentors. And I bring that up because you'll meet so many different people throughout your career that have an impact on you, whether that be positive or negative or maybe a little bit of both. It's always important then to kind of take those good attributes, the things that really helped you along your way, or maybe it's a leadership style that you identify with, and hold on to those good attributes and use those in your future. It's also important to take note of the ones that you don't appreciate or you didn't enjoy, right? Hold on to those as well so that you know not to incorporate that maybe in your style as you go forward. So instead of, maybe somebody specific for me, it was pulling from a lot of different people that were amazing along my journey.
For me, of course, just so many teachers and professors, and then in my career in the Navy, so many commanding officers who had just such a huge impact. In fact, I'm meeting one of my former skippers this evening to say thank you directly. But I'll tell you one thing that was really special to me was at launch, my 7th grade math teacher came, and she did me a huge favor. When you're in 7th grade in Minnesota, where I grew up, you take a test, a math test, to see if you're going to be in the normal math program or if you're going to be in the advanced program. And I did kind of okay. And she came back to me and she said, I know you can do a lot better than this. And so in the middle of that summer, I took it again, maybe 3 weeks later, did much better, and found myself in advanced math. Now advanced math allowed me to do calculus in high school. That allowed me to be a physics major in college. That allowed me to get my PhD in physics and actually be commissioned in the Navy before my age timed me out, and I was able to become a pilot. So if Ms. Otis hadn't done that, I probably wouldn't be sitting here answering these great questions.
Thank you, Ms. Otis, and all the other Ms. Otises out there. Koichi?
I consider my great mentors the commander of my first and second space flight on a space shuttle mission, U.S. Air Force Colonel Brian Duffy. He's an astronaut, and he knows how to work as a team to maximize the output as a team, and then also how to lead a team for a successful mission. And he delegates and listens well, and then working with him, it looks very natural to work as a team, and then as a result, everybody is very happy, and then we have accomplished everything that we needed to do with this leadership style, so I learned a lot. And all of you are working, doing internship in different U.S. agencies, but I'm very thankful to the U.S. leadership in the space program. Otherwise, I was not going to be able to fly in space. I longed for flying in space when I saw the Apollo lunar landing when I was 5 years old. At the time, there was no Japanese astronaut, and there was no rocket for Japanese to go. And then thanks to the leadership of the United States space program, I was able to join. So many of you are affected, not only this country, but also many countries are affected by the work that you do as a federal government employee. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That was powerful. Looking back at your own career journeys, is there one piece of advice that you give to your younger self? And this time I'm looking at Josh.
Yeah, because I'm the most immature and I'm probably
Exactly.
that close to that younger self. That's probably accurate.
It was the normal math question.
I will tell you, I think the piece of advice I would give is that something new might seem really, really daunting, but once you get into it, it tends not to be. It tends to be just a new language that you need to learn. Sometimes that language is lingo, sometimes that language is math. but I found that almost every new adventure that I've tried has seemed a lot scarier when I thought about it, as opposed to when I was actually going after it.
That's great. Nicole?
For me, I would say that, everything you do in life, a lot of times you're focused on a goal. So for me, it was, going to the Naval Academy, graduating. I was commissioned in Marine Corps, and I need to go to flight school, and now I need to get jets, and now I need to get this next qual and do this next thing. And I felt like you're always so focused on that next goal, sometimes you forget to slow down a little bit and realize that the journey that you're on is the goal. That's life, what you're doing. And so I would tell my younger self to maybe live in the moment a little bit more, just reflect on that, be very intentional about maybe keeping a journal or just reflecting upon your day, because before you know it, you're gonna be on a career and you'll be looking back at all the amazing things that you did, and you'll want to be able to hold on to that a little tighter.
And your younger self would add right in journal on your to-do list, right?
Of course,
Check it out.
with a big box.
Koichi?
Well, one advice is, you are all young, and then I'm on the older side, but as Nicole said, set a clear goal, and then do not assume that the status quo is what it's supposed to be, because I learned a lot from my new generation astronauts, and so we have to assume, we have to evaluate the current situation, and what works best, what is best now is what you need to do. So of course you have to look back on the past history of all the achievements of many things that you have done, and as an organization, what has been done. But at the same time, you have to listen to the new peoples, and you have to judge what is best to do right now.
That's great. So I'm going to take the privilege and ask my own question. So we're coming off of Mental Health Awareness Month, and I joke that, and it's kind of a serious, but also that after, we're all a little bit unwell now, right? Like life is hard, there's a lot of noise. How do you all stay centered? Are there things that you do to keep you grounded, to keep you calm, to bring you serenity/peace? And do you have any advice for those in the audience and online to get that peace and serenity?
I always think why I'm doing this job, and then when I have a difficulty and facing some challenges, that's always I go back, why am I doing this? And then, that gives me, what I need to do by knowing the clear goal. And then, and remember, when you're struggling, that's the best time. That's the time that you're improving the most. And so remember that, and I always keep that in mind.
For me, I think what was most helpful was having really good friends up there. So when you are struggling, you're like, hey, this is just not my day, floating over to Nicole and saying, this is not my day, you need to help me out. And just having a great friend there that you can lean on. Now, Nicole's got this great story about meditation, and it actually happened to both of us. I don't know if you know that, but we both did meditation on board, and you should tell them your story about meditation.
So I was worried about, just like Josh mentioned, about being able to sleep on board the space station. And so when you're out there, I just ended up putting one bungee around myself, and you float, and it's actually quite comfortable because you don't ever get like a kink in your neck or like an ache in your back or anything like that. You're just floating the entire time. But I found towards the beginning of the mission especially, my brain was just too fast. And at night, I wasn't able to kind of slow it down so that I would fall asleep. So I started doing a sleep meditation, and it was wonderful. That music plays, it's very soft and gentle, and the moderators, talking, okay, relax, your legs, your body, just imagine yourself floating in space. And I was like, wait a minute, I am floating in space. It was the funniest thing. But, after that, I actually slept quite well because it is busy on board station. And to Josh's point, there are days, even though you're an astronaut and you've trained for years and you're doing the most incredible work on board the International Space Station, you can lose perspective sometimes. You can get overwhelmed by all the work you need to do. You can feel frustrated because maybe you're not working as efficiently as you'd like, or you lost something and you're behind timeline. So it was really helpful to lean on each other, to work well as a team, but also to understand how important self-care is for you. So whether that be doing some sleep meditation at night or going to the cupola and looking out at our beautiful planet to bring that perspective back. It's whatever you find for yourself that's important. It's okay to be selfish at times and take that time to keep you well. You'll find that then you're gonna be a better crew member, a better teammate.
I was hoping one of you would say, I binge eat at night ice cream or something like that. I know you all have another event this afternoon, so I'll wrap up with just maybe one or two more questions, and then we'll move to the next part of the program. But I did want to ask, because this came up several times, people were interested in, can you share the moment or time when you knew you wanted to be an astronaut, and what was the first thing you did to start that path?
That's easy for me. As I said, I saw the Apollo 11 lunar landing, and I longed for going to space, but at the time there was no Japanese astronauts, and I was really interested in airplanes, and I wanted to build and fly, so I studied aeronautical engineering, and after becoming an aeronautical engineer for Japan Airlines, I saw the newspaper article that the Japanese Space Agency was selecting. So even though I was not really trying to become an astronaut because it was impossible, but the study and the process and the knowledge that I gained through the study and also working as an engineer really helped me to apply for astronauts 2 decades later.
That's cool.
I personally wanted to play Major League Baseball, and it was pretty clear that my fastball wasn't going to break 80 miles an hour. But I also really loved math and science, and I was really interested in aviation. But I've got a friend who points out to me, he says, hold on, you wanted to play Major League Baseball, but then you chose a job that is much more selective than that. But for me, being an astronaut was something I was always very, very interested in, starting in probably about 7th, 8th grade. But it was also something I never counted on. You come down to Houston and you interview with amazing people like this, and you think, wow, that was a super cool experience, and I'm going to use that to inspire everything else I do in life, but there's no way I'm coming back to Houston. It's an amazing opportunity, but I like to think of it as the lottery. You can't win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket, but you should probably have a different retirement plan than that. So that's how I looked at it, and I'm very fortunate to be up here with these guys.
That's great.
I didn't realize really the potential of becoming an astronaut until I was older in my career flying jets in the Marine Corps. I think as a child I was interested in math and science, but I'd never met an astronaut. I didn't know really what they did, and I didn't connect myself to having that career. And then when I went through test pilot school, and I'm a test pilot at Pax River, Maryland, NASA puts out a call for applicants. And I had just become pregnant with my son. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, that would have been really cool, but I'm at a kind of a branch in my life. I'm super excited to have a son. I've made this decision, and clearly I can't become an astronaut now, right? This just doesn't work. I guess that timing didn't work out. And I remember going home and talking to my husband and saying, hey, NASA's opening, applications, but of course I'm not going to apply because we're gonna have a kid. And he looked at me like I was crazy. And he's like, what? Like, there's never a good time to have a child. There's never a good time to become an astronaut. There's never a good time for that. And so he gave me that support to apply. And so when you make that decision, first step, to Josh's point, is one, apply, right? Because if you never do, if you count yourself out, if you're nervous about failing or not getting that job, well, you're definitely not gonna get it if step one, you don't fill out the application. And then step two, surround your people with people that love you and support you, whether that be family, friends, your community, your teachers. You're not gonna get there on your own. You're gonna need those support people, and that's okay.
And I think that's a great segue to a final question. So Nicole gave some advice. I would now ask each of you to give one piece of advice to the interns in the audience. What can they do over the summer, over the next year, that you think would be impactful? Just thinking about this is the next generation of federal talent. So anything that you want to offer up to the group?
I can start because I was an intern at NASA in 1994. I was down at the Marshall Space Flight Center for a summer. When I did my research in physics, we were funded by the NSF, and that was working through the Department of Energy. And then after that, I went to the Department of Defense. So I've been in a lot of different departments. And I will tell you, my one piece of advice is just be curious. If you think you know what you want to do, go ahead and look into it, but also look into other things too. I mean, you're really young. I'm super envious, honestly. I'm sitting up here and I'm telling you I'm envious because you've got your entire life ahead of you. I have no idea what I want to do when I grow up, and I mean that. And so I would say stay really curious and go find that thing that you're really passionate about, and then do that, and then maybe some other things too.
Actually, I agree with Josh, and I did the internship not in the government, but in Japan in a company that builds airplanes. But looking back, I think I should have asked more questions, and this is a perfect opportunity to get to know a lot of people. So, talk to a lot of people in your working environment and ask as many questions that you came up with, because by asking questions, you gain more knowledge, and then you get to know more people. So don't be afraid to ask questions and be curious.
Love that.
And I think, just to elaborate a little bit before on what I said, I think in life you're going to set your goals, and obviously you're very motivated and you have a lot of initiative. You're already doing an internship. You'll learn so much over the summer. And so setting those goals and having those dreams is probably something you've already been able to do. I think the challenging part comes next, and that's having the discipline to then go after those dreams, right? You set that goal, but how are you actually going to get there? And you will stumble along the way, and you will have setbacks, and you may even change your mind and go a different direction. And I think that that's okay as well. So that's all a part of the journey. But I think really having the discipline to stick with it through even those hard times is a skill that you'll need to be successful in life.
And that is a great way to end this segment. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And first of all, you are all such inspiring public servants, and we're just blessed and honored that you joined us today, and we hope you come back. Right now, I'm going to ask the OPM and DOI principals, Rob Shriver and Joan Mooney, to come up on stage, and we're going to do the presentation of the montage, which I have here, and then
We have to open it. I think we leave it in the plastic. You think? Okay. So what we've got here is a montage that kind of summarizes not only Crew-5, but our Expedition 68 endeavor. And you can see here's our launch back in October. Here's our crew with Einstein, or what we call a free fall indicator. It's not 0G. These guys got annoyed that I kept pointing that out. And then here it is returning, and then this was some of the work we did to install those solar arrays. So we've got 2 of these to hand out. So thank you so much for having us. This was such an incredible opportunity.
Thank you. What an honor to serve.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Do we grab this?
Thank you so much. What a great presentation. How inspiring. One more round of applause for the crew. We also have a small token of our appreciation in the bags next to you. I was really excited to hear Koichi mention honey, because there is actually an OPM employee who is a beekeeper and makes his own honey, and so you have some locally made honey in the bag among some other trinkets. So just a small sign of our appreciation. And if you'll indulge me just for 1 minute to wrap up here. So what I like to say is, whether someone works with us in the federal government for 3 months, 3 years, or 3 decades, we want your experience to be educational, rewarding, and fun. We want you to tell your friends and colleagues that the federal government is a great place to work, and everyone should spend a portion of their career working with us. And as OPM's Deputy Director, I want you to know that I am personally invested in you having a good experience. I am a huge champion of federal employees, and my own experiences have been positive and inspiring. But it's a big government, and I know that that might not be the case for every one of you. We have really been pushing agencies to hire more interns, and to their credit, they are jumping in. But some may not have had interns for several years, frankly. And so there may be some bumps in the road along the way. So I'd ask you to, in addition to being curious and unafraid to ask questions, which I think is fantastic advice, and to enjoy the journey, also to be patient and help them work through these bumps, because you're the ones that are experiencing them, and your feedback's going to be really important. But this is what I want to leave you with. If you're having a bad experience and you've given it some time and it's not getting any better, send me a note, seriously. My email is simple. It's deputydirector.shriver@opm.gov. So that's deputydirector, one word, .shriver, SHRIVER, @opm.gov. I'm serious about this. I care about each and every one of you, and I want you all to have a fantastic experience. Please send me a note if you're not. And also, if you're having an amazing experience and you want to tell me about that, I'll be thrilled to hear about that too. Again, thank you all for answering the call of public service. I originally had a whole bunch of astronaut puns in my remarks, but I was afraid they wouldn't land so well, so I skipped them. But there's just a few that I can't resist. And I'm sorry, not starry. STARRY. The federal government is a little brighter with you all here, and I know you'll all rock it this summer. So thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, and we're concluding. Have a great rest of the summer, guys.
Nicely done. Nicely done.